right, I'm adding names in, and I will to invite you to the Google Hangout. And hopefully you will be able to receive these and participate. If you have questions, this is completely optional. You do not have to participate, but I would love for any of you to feel comfortable participating. If you do have questions and would like to. Okay. Some of you will have received invitations now, and the rest of you will be receiving them in this next round. Like I said, please feel free to participate if you have questions. But this is completely optional. There is no makeup assignment or anything for this one. The module discussion this week will happen just in the content discussion will happen just in your discussion board. The posts that are there will be only the only ones that you are graded on. But this is just an opportunity for you to ask questions about your assignments that are coming up. I know people have had a couple of questions, and I thought it would be helpful to be able to answer them this way. That way too, if other people want to go back and watch it later, they're able to. So I hope it will prove helpful and that people will get to ask what they need to. Okay, last round of invites going out right now. If anyone didn't get one or was unable to open theirs, if you will hey, Allura, I see that you've joined us. Thank you. You can turn your video on if you'd like to. That's entirely up to you. You just scroll your cursor to the top middle part of your screen. You should be able to turn your video on.
I've been sick, and so I've been throwing up, so I do not look good right now.
I'm sorry about that. There has been a lot of illness.
Yeah.
Dealing with a lot. Yeah. It's fine to go without. Plus, too, if you got any bandwidth issues, it helps to just keep the video off.
Got it.
How long have you been sick?
Well, it's actually a condition. It's called cyclic vomiting syndrome. So.
Okay.
No worries.
Well, and since you're the first one here, would you like to ask whatever questions you'd like to ask, so you can have the floor?
So I was thinking about with my model, would a good idea? So I'm really into sewing. Would like a sewing project be a good idea?
Yes, that's a perfect idea. That's the you want to say a little bit more about it before I just start talking?
I haven't really completely thought it out there yet. So I was thinking about making a video out of it, of like doing a template first, being like, hey, this is too big for me and it's too broad, so I'm going to alter it, and then make it more suited to me, and then add more details to be like, this is another concept from another aspect of different theories. Is that something I could do?
Yes, that would be perfect. That would be perfect. And another thing, like when you think about the type of integration that seems to be working best for you, you could use, I could envision you using any of them with your idea of a sewing project. Like if you did common factors, you might use a couple of many different types of or colors of, what do you use, string or yarn or what? I'm not sure what kind of project you do. But,
like I sew clothes.
Oh, okay. So you probably use fabric and string and a lot, like, so you could talk about either different types of the materials as you bring them together. What are the common factors across those, and how do they fit for you? Or it might be, I don't know what, I'd have to hear a little bit more about your theoretical framework, not tell me so much about the project. But let's say that you have an accommodative integration, an assimilative integrationist approach. where one core theory seems to be really resonating with you, you feel like that one's me, but I need some other pieces. If that's what you're feeling, then with an assimilative integrationist approach, you would have like your fabric part is that really core theory, right? Like it's big and it's clear, and no matter what you add to it, you can still see that fabric, right? It doesn't fundamentally change when you add other components. And then the threads that you add could be elements of another theory that you pull in, or the buttons that you add could be elements of another theory that you pull in. If you have some techniques from this theory that you like to use, they could be the buttons. But if you have some other like process pieces from a theory, another theory that you like to use, maybe that's the thread that kind of holds it all together, you know?
Okay. I like that.
It kind of depends on what you're doing. Let's say that you really like choice theory, and that seemed like a good foundational theory to you, but you feel like without the relational elements of person-centered, there's something missing. Well, then choice theory would be that big fabric, that core piece. But then the relational elements of person-centered, you weave them in to hold it all together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can still tell they're different, but by putting them together, they're stronger, and they make that true theoretical framework that you have to use.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome to those of you who have joined us. We've got Lauren and Alicia. Feel free to jump in. Lauren, I muted you just a minute so I could hear what Laura was sharing. But please feel free to unmute yourself and jump in and ask any questions you might have about your theoretical conceptual model assignment, or I'm going to mute you just for a minute, Lanisha, or your theory assessment assignment. I also sent out a few pieces of information. Some of it you've already had access to in modules, but posted them again in announcements just in case it will be helpful for folks. But if you, and also unmute yourself if you're having trouble with that, because like I muted you for the background noise, just scroll your cursor to the top middle part of your screen and you can control everything. Like you can unmute yourself, you can turn on or off your video, whatever's easy. But if you have any questions at all, you can ask them. This is a good time to do that.
I just wanted to know whether or not, like, because it's about what our views on the theories. I just didn't want to know if we're being docked, if we like think maybe psychoanalytical theory is a bit too impersonal, and when we represent that, like, it's our own beliefs, right, about what theory is better and how much power they have across the board and where they're weakened.
Yes, that is absolutely correct, Lanisha. There are certain when you rate those theories each week, or when you've been rating those theories each week, there are certain elements that are clearly articulated for theories, right? So if they're in there and it's clear, it doesn't matter if you think the way they use it is good. It's just, is it included? Does this theory address this power? And if it does, then you rate it higher, right?
Yes.
So that part is subjective in that you're determining whether or not it's really articulated, but it's also a little more objective because you're reading about it in your text, right? And it says some things are included and some things are not. But then at the end, what you're asked to do is to write a response reflecting on whether you agree with the way the final numbers came out. So if when you finish, a theory is ranked really high, but you think that theory is really not all that useful. Like, it's not that it's so much stronger than the other theories. It just had those parts. Then you reflect on that, right?
Oh, okay.
Or if you have one that's rated low because a lot of those parts weren't included really, but you feel like it's a strong theory, it's really useful and important, then you reflect on that piece.
Okay. Because like the theories had like all these different parts, and you're like, oh my god, this is really great, humanistic, but I also like this of cognitive behavioral. Like if humanistic had this portion, it'd actually be a really, really great theory. If it, when like you had these other theories segments built into it, it'd be like really strong. If you would adopt from these other theories to make your power higher.
Yes, Lanisha, that's right, and that's how the two assignments tie together. Okay. Because, I mean, you don't have to tie them together, but this is why they're both included in this class. Because like you said, sometimes you'll learn about some theories and you'll think, well, it's got everything, right? But but it's got the parts that we know go with the theory, but to me, it feels like it falls a little flat or doesn't work that well or would need this or that. But then there may be another theory that you think, this one's awesome. Like, this is it. This is how I see the world and how I see relationships with people. And this is what I think really matters. But for it to work well with clients, I kind of need to add this and this other piece, right?
Kind of I like person-centered theory. I like everything about it. But I'm like, oh, Freud's psychosexual and Erickson's and Maslow's hierarchy, they'll be a good baseline and good information to know. But initially, something you'd focus on, but it's a good like history of the back of the client.
Yeah. Yes. And so exactly. And so like when you rate the theories on the theory assessment, it's a little more dry, right? Then you do your 1-page reflection, just like Jeannie said. It's just a 1-page reflection. You do have to turn in both parts. So let me just stop and say that, Jeannie. Yes, you're right. You need to turn in both parts, the grid and the reflection. I would just do them right on that one Word document, type it in, and then send it to me. All right, but when you rate them on that grid, and you do the little, that's the kind of dry part. Your reflection is, well, this is how they were rated, but this is kind of what I believe, which could be, yes, they're the same, or no, those two things are different. And then with your theory conceptual model, what you're doing is saying, so how will I practice? Like, and how does it fit with me as a person? That's how kind of those pieces track together. And how we'll practice, if it's an integrated approach, if it's not just one theory you're going to use, if you're going to do like Renisha's talking about and pull in pieces together because that would make it really strong, you talk about how did you do that integration.
Okay.
And your artifact, that artifact you created or that piece, the artifact is how you explain to all of us what it is you're doing. And your artifact's a great time to really make it personal. So Laura was mentioning that she likes to sew. So with that sewing, she might present her artifact as a sewing component, right? It's something she has sewn, and talk about her process of integration there. It is something tangible. The model is something tangible. So, and for you can, when you do your video explanation of it, you might do it like while you're making it if you want to, or you might just have the thing at the end, like where you hold something up and you talk about it, whatever seems the best to you. But let's think about like accommodative integrationist. With accommodative integrationist, that core theory that you've got, when you pull other pieces in, it's fundamentally changed. So if you use person-centered theory as your core theory, and then you pull in some behavioral components or more directive components, well, that theory is fundamentally different than it is in its most pure form, right? So an example, if you are a person who cooks, an example of that would be like a bisque. So like if you made a bisque, when you have a base, that it is clearly present. Like everybody can identify that base. But when you pull in those other components and you blend those components together with your immersion blender or whatever, they are blended in such a way that you can't ever take them out separate from each other again, right? They are fundamentally different because of how you blended those pieces together. That's an accommodative integrationist approach. And for someone who cooks and really loves cooking, they might make a bisque and then talk about that process and share an example of that with us. Like a metaphor, exactly. Thank you, Julie. You're like geniuses in this class. The reason we do that too is for 2 parts. One is because we want you to start reflecting on how you bring yourself into counseling and why that matters and how you should really, really work hard to be genuine and consistent. So when you think about something that's really important to you that you present to us as your artifact and you use that artifact to explain your process of integration and your theory or your theoretical conceptual framework, when you do that, you begin to think about how am I in this? And why am I, like, why does that matter that I'm in this? How does that impact my clients? Presentation through kind of the process of metaphor. And what we know is that metaphor is really, really powerful in session with clients. It's a great way to build insight, to foster insight for your clients or promote insight. But it's also you have to, some people are kind of think that way through metaphor themselves, in a lot of parts of their lives. But for most of us, as a clinician, you have to be more intentional about learning to use metaphor as a way to promote insight. So it's a skill that we assess throughout all of your clinical experiences courses, and it's an advanced skill, but we want you to kind of start thinking that way early. So in this first class, we build that piece in for that theoretical conceptual model. Hey, Brittany.
Hi. Professor, for me, it was just like trying to figure out assimilative and accommodative. Like those two words always tripped me up. Like you said, like when you said about the bits, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Like, you know, once you have it and you turn it into ice cream, it's completely different from when it started off as that and then it changed to something completely different. But you can still say there was milk in there.
Right.
With these other elements. I was like, oh, why didn't you say it to me in the first place?
So that pulls it together, right? So like for assimilative integration, you can still take each of the pieces out, right? So like it might be more like a soup. You know, like if you cut up potatoes and you cut up, take out
the carrots and take out the potato parts.
Right?
Like a pizza. Like, you know, I don't like mushrooms on it, but I'll take the mushrooms out of it.
Yes, and when they still come off, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense.
Or you could think about like from the food standpoint, if you think about pico de gallo versus guacamole. You know, guacamole is all really blended together. You can't take those parts out easily. Right? But pico, you can take the pieces apart. Mm-hmm.
Unless they're too small, but yeah, you can take them out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. And they are, you still kind of have a trace of it. With a lot of these things, they still have, the impact is felt, right, across the elements, but it's not, like, fundamentally different. The way you can't ever get back to the regular.
Okay.
Let me ask this too, just to make sure, because I realized that I missed some folks before. Like, are any of you seeing questions from people that I'm not seeing right now that you could give me like, if anybody's seen any questions, then please tell me. If you'd ask them, that'd be great. Or if you know anybody, like if anybody's emailed each other and said, I'm having a hard time getting in, if you'll tell me, I'll try to send an invitation again. Oh, okay. Julie's got another good question. Okay, I got 2 questions here. For the theory Jeannie asked, for the theory conceptual paper, do we need to have headings similar to the rubric you've provided? You can, it's fine. That makes it easy for me with the grading, but that's really up to you. I mean, that rubric, the rubric tells you what I'll be looking for. Now, how you want to structure it in your paper, that's really up to you. And I'm very.
Do you want APA format?
You're not going to really have a lot. If you cite something, then yes, make sure you use APA citations, but you're not going to have a lot of, you should have a lot. I wouldn't expect you to have a whole lot of citations, so stress. You don't need a cover page. You don't need an abstract. Just put your name on it. But that is all. That's it. Okay, and then Julie said, if we have 2 or 3 theories we want to integrate, but they're all similar, it would not be accommodative. Well, it depends, right? It could definitely be accommodative. If what you're seeing, how you decide what it is, which form of integration it is, at the base level, the way you decide that is by what seems most important to you in terms of how you decided on these theories. If what's most important to you is a core theory and then other pieces need to be supplemented, like if what's most important to you is a core theory and then you bring in other supplemental pieces, then it's going to be either accommodative integrationist or assimilative integrationist. And the way you'll decide then, like in a little decision tree, which one it is by that question of, is my core theory fundamentally different because I brought these other pieces in? Right. If it is fundamentally different, it's accommodative. If it's not fundamentally different, if you can still see that pure theory in there, it's assimilative. If what is most important to you is certain factors, those certain pieces, like this thing needs to be present across all these theories. Like I can't work if I don't have A, B, C, D. And I find A, B, C, D pieces that I have to have for it to work for me to work as a counselor and for SES to work. I find those A, B, C, D pieces in this group of theories. They all have all of these pieces. These are common pieces across all of these theories. What I believe to be true is that you have to have these pieces, and these theories have them. So these are the theories I use. If that's what's most important to you, that's a common factors approach. Okay? But if what's most important to you is to find techniques that align with the client's needs at the time, you try to understand your client and align techniques to that client's needs. And you pick those techniques from a range of theories that you're comfortable with. Then that is a technical eclecticism approach. So you ask yourself that question of what is most important to me? Is it really jumps out? If it is, it's going to be either assimilative or accommodative. If it's a set of factors that are really most important, then it's common factors, because you'll find them in these shared group theories that I'll share those same factors. And if it's really client and technique, then that's going to be technical eclecticism. Yeah. Yes, Julie said, so common factors versus integration. Well, common factors is a form of integration.
Is it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, common factors is also a form of integration, because what you do is you look for those factors and then you integrate the theories that have those factors into your approach. But technical eclecticism is also a form of integration. You just got to figure out which form of integration fits with how you want to practice. Does that make sense, Julie? But does it make sense to everybody? But Julie had commented a couple of times about it.
No, it's kind of confusing because they sound completely similar, and it's just like one thing that makes them different. I'm here like label and it being something else.
I don't know if I'm understanding that part, Lanisha. Would you mind saying that one more time?
Like, I already know that I'm going to be close to persons, but I like the stuff from Erickson and Freud and having a basics background. Am I saying that it's simulating it because it's from a whole different? It's not even like close to humanism. It's like on analytical, cognitive behavioral technique, and like it's not common factors. Is it, or is it assimilative? Like I'm going to label the therapy wrong of how I'm putting them together.
No, it doesn't sound like you're doing them wrong by how you're putting them together. There will be some pieces that, like if you bring it, the ones you're talking about actually can go together pretty well, and you could still keep a core that doesn't have to be fundamentally different. Because Adlerian and Erickson's approach they can provide some structure for a humanistic approach that doesn't change it as much as like a cognitive behavioral approach might. But if you could use assimilative or accommodative, kind of depends on how you see yourself framing it. But if you did it would seem unlikely that those use the way you're describing them, because when you talk about it, so you talk about a core one first. So that one doesn't. It doesn't seem that you're naturally tracking to a common factors approach. It seems less about the factors that you're using being consistent across the theories, and more about a core theory seeming more important to you. So it seems like it would be accommodative or integrate or assimilative. Are there some other questions? Does it kind of make sense how those two assignments give you kind of like steps along the road together versus being completely, like they should inform your journey versus just being separate assignments to write up? Does that part kind of make sense about how they would inform your journey to understanding your practice as a counselor?
Yeah, it does make sense because you're looking at the different, when you're doing the assessment and you're analyzing like which one, like if you suddenly see that one is strong and you're like, but I don't agree with that one, and you're saying why you don't agree with that one, you can kind of relate it in your paper, I feel like, maybe.
Yeah, I think you can. I think that when you explain why you don't agree with something, a lot of times it becomes more clear to you agree with some of the other things. You know, if you have to articulate, like, it's one thing to just say, I don't like that one, but if you have to articulate it, if you choose to articulate why you don't, it gives you a little more insight, I think, into why you do like the others.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to say. I couldn't think of the right wording.
You're fine. Lindsay mentioned that there were a lot of pieces from the different chapters in the chat. She mentioned there were a lot of pieces from the different chapters that she kind of felt like she wanted to use. And I think that is true too. Like a lot of, if you enjoy learning, which probably many of you do, then as you read about the different theories, you'll kind of think, well, that sounds neat, and I could put this piece in. Or if you're a systemic thinker, you might find yourself kind of naturally drawing connections across many of the different theories. So you may choose, like Lindsay was considering, to go back and read the chapters again. But you might also want to spend that part of that time, instead of reading all those chapters again, kind of reflecting on what seems to be most important to you. You know, that very first PowerPoint we did in Module 1, there was a PowerPoint where you answered a bunch of questions for yourself. When you answer those questions, as you think about the different powers and sensitivities, sometimes when you look at those powers and sensitivities, like mirrored against your answers to those questions, you kind of get a sense of what you need to be true about human interaction and change, like dynamics and change and process. Sometimes one theory might emerge as a better, more closely aligned to what you believe and how you act in the world than some of the others. I think that's time well spent to do that reflection for yourself. And it can make it a little easier to choose your theories. Oh, and Lindsay presented a very useful point. She said, when I sit down and think about it, I really agree with cognitive behavioral, but I also like humanistic too because of the empathy for the client. So like we were mentioning before, a lot of people find themselves in that boat. Like they are right at the very beginning, Allura and I were talking about this. Cognitive behavioral theory provides some kind of clear structure and framework for practice, like how to approach a session with the client and how to come to some understanding of dysfunction and what's happening with the client, and even give some clarity around the probable course of development for that dysfunction. You know, what you might see happen with the client. Counselors like that. Like, it's nice to have a sense of what to expect and how to structure my session, right? Like, you know, and what can I do to kind of prompt some movement with this client. Cognitive behavioral gives you a lot of that, but there is a piece around empathy and connection, human connection, that is less clearly addressed with cognitive behavioral than it is with humanistic. So if you find yourself in that boat where you like that structure, but some of those relational pieces seem to be missing to you and you'd like to pull in the humanistic, then maybe what you'll find is that if you do that, if your core is cognitive behavioral and you're pulling in humanistic, then you could use accommodative or assimilative. And you just have to decide how much does it change that core cognitive behavioral approach when you pull in those other pieces. And if it changes it a lot, it's fundamentally very, very different, then you're going to be accommodative. If it doesn't change it that much, it just kind of enhances it, you know, warms that color up some, then that's assimilative integrationist. Now, if you're using as your core, if the most important part to you is really that empathy or relationship, like Lindsay was talking about, if that's your core, and you pull in more structural elements from cognitive behavioral, more directive elements from cognitive behavioral, you will most likely find yourself tracking towards accommodative integrationists, because that humanistic approach is qualitatively changed by pulling in those structured cognitive behavioral elements. But you can certainly pull those pieces together. There are a lot of great counselors out there whose practice is bounded by a theoretical framework using those that Lindsay mentioned. And again, if anybody sees that, oh, I just saw a question from Lauren that I had not seen. It said, so if I aligned with existential, she most strongly aligned with existential and Gestalt and CBT, if she pulled those all together, what would it look like? It is likely that you're going to see yourself tracking towards, well, it depends on which one's first. Gestalt and CBT can go pretty hand in hand, and you can really see those strongly. You know, like you can see the strong components of those represented, right? Like I can see those pure theories in action by pulling them together still. Now, if existential is your core, though, if that is the one that's most important to you, that's your core, and you pull in those other pieces, well, with that, you're going to be much more technique heavy with the other two than you would be with existential, and so most likely your existential is going to be qualitatively changed. It would be difficult to practice from an existential perspective using those two without kind of modifying that existential perspective in a existential framework in a way that makes it qualitatively different. So if existential is your core and the other two pull in, it's most likely assimilative integrationist. If one of the others is your core and you pull the other two pieces in, excuse me, if existential is your core and you pull those other two pieces in, then what you're going to be seeing is an accommodative integrationist approach. Ignore that last error that I made. Because that existential, if you pull the other two pieces in, it's likely that you're qualitatively changing your existential framework, right? Like at its core, it's going to look a little different than it would if it were practiced on its own in its most pure form. So it's going to be, if you've got existential and you pull in the other two, it's probably accommodative integrationist. If you have one of the other two as your core and you pull in existential and the other one, then that could be assimilative integrationist. And Lauren had asked if it needed to be something visual that we include. Julie answered from her there. Yes, it should. The artifact is a tangible object. So what you turn in for that assignment, what you turn in for the theory assessment assignment, let's just say those two pieces clearly. So for the theory assessment assignment, what you turn in is the grid and your one-page reflection. It is perfectly appropriate and actually very good to just do it right on the Word document, the template that you can download from Blackboard, where you can fill out your grid and then write your response, your one-page response. That's what you turn in for your theory assessment assignment. Your conceptual model, which you turn in, is going to be a video explanation of your artifact that you include. It's a tangible object, so you present that to us and explain how that object represents your theoretical framework, right? You do just a short YouTube video and post it in the discussion board for us all to see. And you turn in your essay, which you email to me. So those are the pieces that get turned in. Any other questions?
And you said we do not need a title page for the essay? Okay.
You do not need a title page.
Okay.
We always say APA format. For all of your classes, we're going to say APA format.
Mm-hmm.
And in some classes, they are going to require all of the components for your APA papers. And in many of your other classes, when we say APA format, what we're going to be meaning is, across the board. You always have to have your citations done correctly, right? And any references, make sure you format your references correctly if you have references. And that you use double space throughout, one inch margins all around, double space throughout, no extra space between your paragraphs. Those are just kind of your core. So everybody always says APA. You need to get used to writing that way. If you can ask a professor just like Laura just did, thank you. But if you need the title page or whatever, usually you won't have to have those. The essay is a one-page response for the theory assessment assignment. Another question?
I have a question.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Assessing strengths and weaknesses, some of that is opinionated, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so, but I just wanted to make sure.
It is. It is like it is when you assess the strengths and weaknesses, on the one hand, it's a little more objective because you read the chapters and you discern from those chapters what pieces are included and what pieces are not. But you're the one doing the discerning, and there's no definitively right response for these, right? So it's also more subjective.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we had a question about the one page, just to make sure I said that clearly. We got, for your theory assessment assignment, you just do the grid and a one-page reflection, okay? For the essay for your theory conceptual model, that's more than one page. I actually do not have that in front of me.
That one's 4 to 6 pages, I think you said.
There we go. So that one's 4 to 6 pages. But for your theory assessment assignment, it's just the grid and a one-page reflection. Okay. Jeannie said, if I'm humanistic, behavior, CBT, and choice, it will be considered accommodative if the core is humanistic. Yeah, most likely. I've had people who've written essays to really explain why they don't believe that their humanistic core has been qualitatively shifted by pulling in those more directive pieces. And some people have done a very good job. And if your explanation is clear, if you get me convinced, then okay. But to me, for most practice, it's going to be accommodative if you have a core humanistic, a humanistic core that you bring in those really directive elements. Any other questions? Questions, you can send them later too. And this, the archive for this will be available at the page where the link is. The link for those of you who are watching it on YouTube, or if you just go to the announcements, the archive of this video should be available there so you can watch it. And that's it. Thanks, Lindsay, too. Lindsay posted that she is going to be posting the Family Systems Give Me 5. Oh, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because there's one additional theory, I think is how the timeline works. But if for the theories, if there's a theory that has not been covered yet for the theory assessment assignment, just do some scanning ahead. That's what we typically ask, is that you just do some scanning ahead during the summer session. The way the syllabus breaks out, there's usually a little bit of a discrepancy between, like, we're not able to get all of the theories in before we finish the theory assessment assignment, so just scan ahead there and make a decision for yourself. All right, well, that's it. I am in Lisbon for the study abroad class this week, so if you email me, the timing is off, so I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And if I've missed an email from anyone, because I was in France last week, then please just email me again. Flag it as important so it shows up at the front. And I will try to respond as quickly as I can to it. All right. Well, thank you very much. And I will talk with you later. Bye-bye.